You feel it before you can explain it. A prickle crawls up the back of your neck. You were certain you were alone, but now your whole body insists otherwise, and slowly you turn around. Most people call this a sixth sense, but the real answer is far stranger. You do have a system for detecting when you are being watched. It is real, it is ancient, and it is wired so deep into your brain that it runs whether you want it to or not. It just isn't magic. It is one of the oldest survival machines you carry. Let's go back. Long before language, long before cities. Your ancestors lived in a world where being looked at was often the last thing that happened before something tried to eat them. A pair of eyes locked onto you from the tall grass was not a social moment. It was a countdown. So your brain built a detector. Not for danger in general, for eyes specifically, for the gaze. Deep along the side of your brain sits a fold of tissue called the superior temporal sulcus. Say it slowly. Superior temporal sulcus. One of its jobs is shockingly precise. It reads where other eyes are pointed, left, right, up, or the one that matters most, straight at you. Why would evolution spend so much on something as small as the angle of a stranger's pupils? Because that angle predicts the future. A predator looking at you behaves very differently from one looking away. A rival holding your stare means something. A passing glance never could. Reading gaze correctly was the difference between reacting in time and not reacting at all. You can see how deep this runs by looking at creatures, nothing like you. A butterfly's wings carry two enormous painted circles that look exactly like eyes. A caterpillar puffs up a body marked with two huge false pupils. A small fish wears a dark spot near its tail that mimics a watching eye. None of these animals can think, but evolution discovered the same trick again and again because almost every creature alive flinches at the sight of eyes pointed back at it. A stare is one of the oldest threats in nature. Your brain inherited that fear long before it was ever yours, and here is where it gets unsettling. When your brain is unsure, when the light is dim, or the face is far, or the eyes are half hidden, it does not flip a coin. It guesses in one direction. It assumes you are being looked at. A researcher named Clifford studied exactly this. He showed people faces with ambiguous eyes, gazes that could have been aimed slightly to the side or straight ahead, and asked one simple thing. Are these eyes looking at you? Again and again. When people couldn't be sure, they defaulted to yes. Their brains treated uncertainty as a stare. Sit with what that means. Your gaze detector is not neutral. It is paranoid by design. It would rather warn you 100 times for nothing than stay silent the one time it counts. A false alarm costs you a moment of unease. A missed signal, in the world your ancestors lived in, could cost you your life. So you are built to feel watched, even when you are not. But it runs deeper than instinct, because this system doesn't even need your conscious eyes to work. There was a patient known in the research only as TN who lost his sight, not his eyes. Those were intact. The part of his brain that turns light into vision had been destroyed. He was by every test completely blind. He could not see a face in front of him. He could not name a shape, point to a light, or read a single letter. A scientist named Alan Pegner ran an experiment with him. He showed TN faces. Some looked directly at him, some looked away. TN, of course, said he saw nothing at all. He was guessing, he insisted. He had no idea, but his brain knew. When the faces stared straight at him, a region called the amygdala lit up. The amygdala is your alarm center, a small almond-shaped knot buried deep in the brain that handles fear and threat. In a blind man who could not consciously see anything, it still fired, but only for the eyes aimed at him. His sight had gone dark. His gaze detector was still standing watch. That is how old this system is. It runs underneath sight. It runs underneath you. And here's something stranger still. You didn't learn any of this. You were born with it. At Birkbeck in London, researchers Teresa Faroni and Mark Johnson showed faces to newborns, babies just 2 to 5 days old. Some faces looked straight at the infant. Some looked away. The newborns stared longer at the faces meeting their eyes, and their brains responded more strongly to that direct gaze. Days old, no words, no experience, no lessons, already tracking who was looking back at them. You came into the world already searching for eyes, already needing to know which ones were pointed at you. It was that important. Now here's the twist most people never expect. This same machinery, the one that makes you feel watched in an empty room, quietly shapes how you behave, when you actually might be. And it does it without ever asking your permission. At Newcastle University, a researcher named Melissa Bateson set up a quiet test in a coffee station. Staff paid for their drinks using an honesty box. No cashier, no camera. Just trust. Above the price list, Bateson taped a small image. Some weeks it was a picture of flowers. Other weeks a pair of human eyes. Nothing else changed. The eyes were not real. Everyone knew they were only a photo on a wall. It didn't matter. In the weeks the eyes were watching, people paid nearly 3 times as much for their coffee. A flat image of a gaze, taped above a tray of mugs, made grown adults more honest. They could not help it. Some ancient part of them registered eyes, registered being seen, and adjusted their behavior before their conscious mind could even object. You do this too, every single day. You sit up straighter when you feel observed. You drive more carefully, past a parked patrol car, even an empty one. You behave differently, in a room with a camera, even one you suspect is switched off. The feeling of being watched doesn't only make you nervous, it makes you behave. It always has. It is one of the quiet forces that lets a group of strangers trust each other at all. And your modern world has learned exactly how to pull that lever. Think about how many eyes are aimed at you right now. Not predators in the grass, cameras on the corner, lenses on every phone in every pocket, a profile photo staring out of a screen, the small dark dot of a webcam above your monitor. Your ancient detector cannot tell the difference between a lion and a logo. It only registers eyes, and quietly, patiently, it keeps you in line. This is why a room can feel crowded when it is empty, why a single portrait on a wall seems to follow you across the floor, why you lower your voice near a microphone or glance over your shoulder on a street where no one knows your name. Your brain is doing the very same thing it did 100,000 years ago, scanning for eyes, assuming the worst, keeping you alive against a threat that most of the time simply is not there. So the next time the back of your neck prickles and you are certain that someone, somewhere, is watching, understand what is really happening inside you. It is not a sixth sense. It is not a ghost. It is not the supernatural. It is a survival machine, older than your language and deeper than your sight, doing the single job it was built to do. You feel watched because the ones who didn't feel it didn't live long enough to pass it on. And that prickle at the back of your neck, it was never a warning about the room you are standing in. It is a memory of every ancestor who turned around in time,